Hey, thank you for joining me on today's episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. In today's interview, I speak with Crain, founder of Charlie's Music Factory. Chris took his passion for music, it's in his blood, and he grew it into a business helping other musicians fulfill their dreams. Let's listen as he shares his personal journey.
Well, I'm a musician, artist, producer, singer, songwriter, just all around lover of music, art, people. And so I started this business, Charlie's Music Factory. The idea came towards the end of 2019, and then it became an official business in January of 2020. And so essentially, this business was developed to help inspiring artists and musicians, songwriters to turn their ideas into tangible.
I love Chris's story here. He's been a musician and been involved with music entirety of his adult life and probably some of his adolescent life as well. He's got passion, he's got experience, he's done a variety of different roles, he's seen music at a different level. And all of a sudden, he's identifying now this is his purpose. Doing music production, helping other people out, helping them understand the way to move forward and to see the path becomes his purpose. And he wants to go for it and start his own business. So clearly, Chris is identifying some type of need. So let's listen next as he describes the problem he wants to solve, how he's going to about fulfilling that need, and really what he needed to decide in order to meet that need.
As an artist, I've always written and produced my own music, but I ran into a lot of challenges as I attempted to take it to the next level, better production, better musicianship, all of those things to get it to the next level to where it was ready for commercial use. And so once I started to understand a few of those nuances, I thought it would be great to help other artists like myself. So this business came from a problem that I experienced, not having the funding to pay the top producers, I mean, it's nothing worse than having a great song, but it's going to cost you $7,000 to produce it. You barely make it rent. So what happens to that?
Yeah.
It just goes away. And for me, that could have been the song that changed or helped or did whatever, made the world a better place, but you never realized it because you didn't have the funding for it. And so by the time the idea came to start this company, I had already produced, man, several records for several and made money doing it. And I started out, at one point wasn't making any money, just happy to get the experience.
Sure.
Somebody come, Chris Craig, can you help me with this idea? Sure. And so I'm experimenting, I'm learning on the job. Sometimes it paid, sometimes it didn't. But, the idea of Charlie's Music Factory, once it actually came to me and I was able to set everything, create the foundation for the business, it was smooth sailing. Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot to break down here because what Chris shares with us is a portion of his personal journey, but this is the crucible moment where he really decides, let's go in business. Here's what happened. He experienced a personal problem. When we think about the entrepreneurial mindset, we have to remember that problems are opportunities. For most people in the world, when they see a problem, they're just like, oh man, that stunk. That was terrible. I wish it could have been better. And they move on with life and never think about it. For people with that mindset, they're looking at it and they're going, huh, does it really have to be that way? Are you sure this is the only way it can ever be? You got to be kidding me. I am positive there's a way to do it. And in fact, we've experienced it. And when we go out and we want to solve the problem, it's because we have personal knowledge of it. Now, that gives us advantages and disadvantages. But in this case, what Chris understands is that he knows what's going on. And then he does the next most important thing that everyone needs to do. And I think oftentimes this is the gap. This is the gap between businesses that are successful and those that are going to fail. He said, I did some experimenting. Sometimes he didn't make any money. Sometimes he made some money. He didn't stick with one idea for one solution. And this is the only way we're going to do it. And it's the first one I came up with, and I'm running with it no matter what. Experimentation, micro experimentation. Start with that concept of the minimum viable product. What's the smallest thing I can do? And then I want to go test those hypotheses. Is this the solution to the problem? Is this even the right problem to solve? You start experimenting. And then you figure out what's out there. And as Chris continued to do that, he continued to build an amazing business for himself. And that's how we set up Charlie's Music Factory. He used his good, strong instincts, his personal experience, feedback he was getting from those experiments, partly feedback he was getting from the musicians, and a whole heck of a lot of hustle, hard work, and sweat. Let's listen to Chris on this next one.
You have to, be willing to put in sweat, and of course we know that that doesn't always pay anything, but if you see how it can go, and I saw it, it was just like writing a song to me. I saw what it could be, and I just had to stick with it. Sometimes writing songs, you'll get an idea today and you won't get the next part of that song. It won't flow naturally. It could be 6 months.
Yeah.
I've worked on songs that took me a year, but once it was done, then it becomes time. It fits every generation. And so that's how this thing was for me with Charlie's Music Factory. And we still got a lot of growing to do. But I realized that early on, I had to put my own time, energy, effort, and money into it in order for it to become in.
Energy, effort, and money. Those three items. He put his own energy, effort, and money into it. And that is what we can contribute to every business. I've said this quote before: entrepreneurship is where hustle meets purpose. You're going to find an entrepreneur every time. That's why I think Chris's story is so inspiring. The way he tells it, the way he experienced it, the way he continues. Energy, effort, and money. Chris took a wise next step, and something I want to encourage all of our clients in Milwaukee Small Business Coach to do: customer discovery, where we actually go out and we're interacting with our customers, with our ideal customers, with the people we want to be our customers, with people we think could be our customers. And we're going to learn from them. We're going to learn from them before we spend all this time and energy building something up that may not work, or building something up that doesn't solve a problem that's there, or building a solution that doesn't address the problem in the way people want it. Let's listen to Chris as he does the hard work.
Once I decided that this is what I wanted to do and I wanted to go forward with it, I did a customer discovery. The most important piece was to ask people, would you pay for this? And I had to really be brutally honest with myself. I read this book called The Mom Test. That book, it pushed me to ask the hard questions, but don't ask people that love me. Ask people who do the same thing that I do, and artists who have paid for projects and producers, and I'm asking people, friends that are Grammy winning, Grammy nominated, have won Grammys, have toured the world and worked with crazy artists. And so I'm asking them, so I need you to fill out this survey. And I created one on Survey Monkey, and I just asked a series of questions. And because I wanted to know the truth, whether just in my head did I think I was going to be able, because the worst thing is to put your money, your time, and your effort into something that won't make any money. And then I feel like I shouldn't have to ask these questions because I have already had a reputation of doing great work. But, you know, again, I had to put my emotions and my feelings aside to just get straight to the truth. Would you pay for this service? Yeah. And then after getting some responses, I then had to go back and say within myself, okay, now what are you going to do? Because they all didn't come back positive.
Chris gets right down to it. This is where the rubber meets the road, folks. Are you willing to pay for my service? And here's the problem. When we ask people that in the hypothetical in the future, hey, once I get this whole thing up and rolling and all that, are you willing to pay me? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's going to be great. That's going to be awesome. That's why Chris referenced the book, The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick. It is the gold standard for customer discovery. It's because your mom probably isn't going to rain on your parade when you're like, hey, mom, I was thinking about baking these cookies and selling them for $15 a piece out on the street corner in the middle of a snowstorm in the darkest day of December. Do you think that's a good idea? Well, honey, you're really smart. You're going to figure it out. And I think that you're going to be successful no matter what you do. Right? The point of the mom test is to be able to ask questions that even your mom can't lie to you on. Okay. Customer discovery is vital because we need to know before we invest all this time and energy and money. I mean, Chris could have built out a mega studio and had all these people on retainer, these musicians, and he's ready to go, but didn't know if people were going to pay for it yet. So he had to go through the hard work, and he tapped people that had been through it He wasn't getting dreamers. He getting people who had succeeded and were, Grammy nominated or Grammy award winners or done the world tours. And you got to ask the questions in a way, hey, talk to me about what you've done before. Talk to me about what you paid before. What type of services, what type of problems are you out there solving? Here's the key. You want to ask people if they have the problem that you are trying to solve. When you get that figured out, then you got to ask them, have they ever spent any money to solve that problem? Takes a lot of humility. And Chris mentioned that, I shouldn't have to do it because I've been doing this for a while, et cetera, et cetera. Man, and it also takes courage to ask people, ask some friends, ask some strangers, ask for that honest feedback. That's why entrepreneurs are courageous people. One last hint on this. I want you to write down the exact words people are using when they're telling you this. Using people's own words, those keywords when you get them instead of your own words, sometimes that can be super powerful because those are the words that are ringing in their head when they say, this is my struggle. This is what I'm willing to pay for. So Chris goes on to speak about all the relationships he's built with other musicians. Relationships are so key and so important as an entrepreneur because we cannot do things on our own. That's why I created this channel. That's why Entrepreneur Encounters exist. We need to meet other entrepreneurs along the journey. Chris is going to tell us the people he was meeting with on his journey.
I did a lot of touring, and I've done workshops, and I've mentored a lot of musicians. And so I've created relationships with musicians all around the country and on different levels, different genres. Some have expertise in country music, orchestral music, jazz, R&B, gospel, whatever genre. Through technology, I've been able to, employ friends, people that are in my network. This one record, we needed horns. So I said, basic form of the song, piano and drums, right? Send it to the horn player, and he creates the horn lines and then records them in his studio and then sends them back to me. I'm able to take those files and throw them in a session. So it allows us to work remote. Now, of course, that's been happening for many years. So we were able to work like that. So I've had drums cut in Louisville, Kentucky, horns in Nashville, strings in Nashville, bass guitar in LA, bass guitar in Houston, drums in Houston, guitar in Mississippi, trumpet in New York. I mean, we're everywhere. And a lot of people have their own home studios now where they can still get good quality sound. And that's all you need.
Chris leverages his relationships to make his business more efficient. He is an amazingly capable musician. I think you've already figured that out by listening to his story so far. He can do almost all the things. However, there are some pieces and some people who are going to be more efficient than he is, or he's just going to bring in the key talent to be able to drive it to the next level. So he doesn't go and pick up his horns or his drums or his keyboards every time in order to build on all the pieces by himself, although he is certainly very capable. He knew a group of highly qualified professionals and he could get the products he want on the timeline that he committed to. That's one of the issues. A lot of times when we're looking at delegating, we're looking at money, we're not really valuing our time efficiently. Chris figured out we got a timeline to get this done. And by outsourcing all the different tracks and then layering them in back together when he assembles it in the production phase, he can get it done and the timeline that it needs. He can bring in some of the highest quality talent. So a lot of entrepreneurs fall into this fallacy and it's really, really hard. I've got to do it all myself. Not so. Reach out to people in your network. If you can't afford to pay for services you need, consider looking at trade and barter. That's a form of delegation. Consider figuring out how to just ask people for information. Sometimes we just need to get educated. I could watch a ton of videos, or I can go sit down with a friend, buy him a cup of tea for an hour and learn a lot more about the capabilities, the ins and the outs, and should I do it or not. We have to think about saving ourselves time. Time is the one piece that we can never get back as entrepreneurs. So Chris is going to go on and he talks about his experience finding funding for his business. This is a challenge that many people have. Spoiler alert, there are no briefcases of money. I think we've heard this theme before. You're going to hear this theme from me a lot. He had to persist. He had to keep at it. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Well, for me, finding the financing was a bit difficult. And one, because the business that I'm in and that I've created is not your orthodox business. It's not, you know, it's not the textbook kind of business. And so, a lot of lenders, they couldn't understand it. Some things they just are what they are, but unless you can put it down on paper and make it make sense to the lenders, then 9 times out of 10, they're not going to fund it. I kept good books, and I keep all my receipts, and I file in my taxes, the things that I'm spending and all of that stuff, so I have a record of and it took me a year to close on the loan that I wanted to get for the start a business. I talked to
I'm gonna
about
write that down.
4 or 5 banks, and all of the lending officers seemed to like what I was doing. But there were a couple things that played. The one biggest thing was my credit. It played a major role. It wasn't that I was really delinquent or had bad credit, but because I had already been operating in this business, I had credit card. And so I made the choice to continue. And I made sure I made my payments on time. And when I would get bigger jobs, I would pay the cards down. And so, I just took control of my own financial movement. And I didn't let anybody or the status quo dictate how I move because I knew what I needed to do for my business to get off the ground. And I couldn't take somebody else's advice who was not going to lend me any money. You have to do what you have to do to get your business moving. You keep chugging away, chug, chug, chug. And, after about the fourth, fifth time, I got a hit. Now, the problem with that was everything looked like it was going to go. Then COVID-19 hits, and then it pushes everything back. So what was supposed to close in June of 2020 didn't close until early March of 2020.
Right.
Got a 9-month delay. And so what I ends up doing is continue to fund the way I've been funding. And then when the loan come through, then I'm able to do some other things. But I kept getting clients. Clients kept coming. But I had already established it.
One of the part that really impresses me about Chris's story and how he goes about getting funding is the incrementalism with which he approaches it. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Chris starts out and he has a funding source the way he does it. He's using his credit cards. He's using his client engagements in order to self-fund. So like he's taking a deposit down before he does it, and then he gets another payment when he's done with the project. He's doing things maybe in installments. He's figuring out how to get his cash flow, and he keeps his business operating at that level at the same time, he's going to banks. And guess what? You heard him say it. It wasn't just one bank. It wasn't the first bank that he tried, but some things he figured out along the way are if his business story doesn't make sense to the funder, they're not going to fund it. If there's an important piece around funding, I want you to take away. And it's why I tell people all day long that you absolutely, absolutely have to know what your story is. And it's way more important than your business plan, because if your funders don't understand your business and your business story, then it doesn't matter. And I'll tell you that in my opinion, most business plans don't do a good job telling the story. The ones that get funded actually are telling a good story while they're at it. So that was piece number one. Chris kept going at it. He kept going at it. He kept trying. Then when he finally had someone ready to go, he found it took him 9 months longer to close than he originally expected. Wanted to close in June, it closed in March of the next year. Well, that happens all the time. We're expecting that piece to happen. Doesn't necessarily take 9 months, but when we look for incremental funding, sometimes when we look for the next deal, sometimes when it's that partnership, this contract, once it lands, I'm going to be able to do the things and hire the people and outsource this and get the bigger whatever. And the contract drags on and it goes on and it comes on. And then sometimes when it finally comes through, it's like, oh, I know I was going to be, 6 figures. Sorry, now it's mid five or whatever the thing is. That sometimes they're not as big as we expect. So we need to keep operating our businesses the way they're always going. Chris was focused. He was intense. He didn't give up. He stuck with it. He got all his ducks in the row. He found the information that was going to be needed in order to make this successful. He didn't give up on the third, fourth try. He just kept going at it. He was humble, made changes, paid down his debt, addressed whatever credit issues might have been there, and eventually landed the loan he needed. At Milwaukee Small Business Coach, we value these statements from the entrepreneurs. The things that they're sharing with us and these encounters are so critical, they can help you grow your business. If you like what you're hearing, please do share it, like it, and subscribe on whatever platform you're on. And as always, we have lots of other content. So do check out some of the other items we have, whether it's on our podcasts, on our insights, or on our video channels. So with that, I'm Brent F. Lawson, Milwaukee Small Business Coach. Thanks a lot. Just like you, I can't do this by myself. I've had a lot of people pour into me and help me out, but I want to specifically thank two people, Kate Half-Lawson for doing a lot of the editing and work to be able to pull this together, and Chris Crain for doing our music, both on the intro and outro. So again, thank you for joining me on this episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. I'm Brent Half-Lawson, Milwaukee Small Business Coach, and I want to invite Chris to take us out.
Ready to take